All right, so the last notes we did 1 through 5. This notes I plan on finishing it off, so 6 through 12. So 6, I'm going to start off by making my XY coordinate plane. I'm kind of enjoying making it on the right-hand side right now, so that's what I'll continue to do. Now notice this 2 is inside with the theta. When the 2 is inside with the theta, this is what's going to affect your period, multiplying inside. So normally, our period is 2 pi, but it's going to be divided by this 2 here. So now my period is pi. My increments, if you remember, are my period divided by 4. So it's going to take my period of pi and divide this by 4. So each of my increments are pi over 4. So my first increment is 1 pi over 4. My next one would be 2 pi over 4. But this can reduce. This will reduce to pi over 2. So let's erase this. This will be pi over 2. And then I have 3 pi over 4. And then I have 4 pi over 4. But wait, this also reduces to pi. Your last increment here should always be your period. That's how you know you did it right. I'll also have the negative versions of these. My amplitude here is 1, so that means I'm going to go up 1. Again, I should do my midline first, and down 1. My midline is 0, so I have no vertical shift. And sine starts on the midline. On midline. So I'm going to make my first point on the midline. So at 0, I'm going to be on the midline at 0. And then because this is a positive sign, my next point is going to go up. So I go over 1 increment and up 1. And then I follow my pattern. Now, because we're not all using the same scale, notice that this is now half as big or half as long as our original one. Okay, so if we looked at number 1, this is now half as long. So since our period, we could fit 2 of these on our first graph. Just the method that we're graphing, because we don't have graph paper or scale to do this. That's how they all kind of will look the same because of our scaling, because of how we make it. But there is a difference in them if we were to make them on some uniform graph together. All right, and then I'll continue my points into the negative quadrant. Now remember, it's got to make a smooth curve. Repeat the pattern. So 7. So again here, my period for cosine and sine is normally 2 pi, but it's going to be divided by 3. Can't reduce this, so my period is 2 pi over 3. So my increments are going to be 2 pi over 3 divided by 4, which is the same thing as 2 pi over 3 times 1/4. So 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. So each of my increments is going to be pi over 6, and I'm going to reduce along the way. So this will be pi over 6. This will be 2 pi over 6, which can reduce to pi over 3. This will be 3 pi over 6, which can reduce to pi over 2. And this will be 4 pi over 6, which can reduce to 2 pi over 3. And again, to make sure you did it right, this last one should always be your period. So let's get our negative ones. My midline here is at 0. My amplitude is 1. So that means I'm going to be going up 1 from my midline and down 1 from my midline. Now cosine starts either above or below. Since this is positive, it's going to start above the midline. So instead of starting at 0, I'm going to start up at 1. And as I go over an increment, I'm going to go down, and then to the bottom, and then to the middle, and then back to the top. I continue this curve into my negative section, following the pattern of from the top all the way to the bottom, and then all the way back to the top. When I find most people miss is they miss the bottom one. They'll go here, and then they'll go here, and then they'll go here, and then they'll go here, and they sometimes miss the bottom one. Or when they try and do it, they won't go all the way. They'll go down and then go back up, and they'll lose that bottom one. All right. So cosine. So now here we have our period is normally 2 pi, but it's divided by whatever's inside with the theta or the x. So this is divided by 4. So my period here is pi over 2. So my increments are pi over 2 divided by 4, which is pi over 2 times 1/4, which is pi over 8. So this is 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, which will reduce to pi over 4, 3 pi over 8, which doesn't reduce, 4 pi over 8, which will reduce to pi over 2. Then I can do the negative sections as well. My midline is at 0. So here's the middle of my graph. And my amplitude is 3. So this means I'm going to be going up 3 and down 3 from my midline. So cosine starts above or below the midline. Since this is negative, we're going to start below the midline. So instead of starting it up here, we're going to start down at -3. And as I go over one increment, I go to the middle, then to the top, then to the middle, and then to the bottom. And then we can do our negative section. All right, so let's go to 9. So now our period is 2 pi divided by whatever number we're multiplying by theta or x, so divided by 1/2. So 2 pi divided by 1/2 is the same thing as 2 pi times 2/1, which is 4 pi. So my increments our period of 4 pi divided by 4. So each increment is pi. So this will be an easy increment one. This will be 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. My midline is at 0. And my amplitude is 5. So this means I'm going to go up 5 and down 5 from my midline. So sine starts on the midline. So I'm going to make a point at 0 on my midline. So now positive sign, so I'm going to go up first. So I'm going to go up to 5. And then back down. And then to the bottom. And then to the middle. So each increment over. And then we finish off the negative side. Now, all of this whole time, we haven't had any horizontal or phase shifts yet. So what a horizontal or phase shift looks like is when you're adding or subtracting inside the cosine to the theta or to the x. All right, so now our period is 2 pi. And we're not multiplying theta by anything, so we're not changing our period. Our increments are our period of 2 pi divided by 4. So this will be pi over 2. This is our original setup. So pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, negative pi over 2, negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and negative 2 pi. My midline is at 0 because I'm not adding or subtracting anything. My amplitude is 1. So it means I'm going to go up 1 and down 1 from my midline. So here's where the phase shift or the horizontal shift comes into play. Remember all this time, anytime we've shifted things left and right, so horizontally, anything inside shifts it left and right, and it's opposite. So this minus pi means that we're going to go right pi. So remember, cosine starts above or below. Since it's a positive, this cosine is going to start above the midline. So normally we would start right here. But because we're going right pi, we're going to go right pi, and this point here is going to be our starting point. Because we've gone right pi. And then we follow our pattern. So cosine, if it's above, then it goes down into the midline. And then it goes to the bottom. So then we'll just have to graph the rest. So if it's at the top, then it's going to go to the middle. And then the bottom. And then we just follow our pattern. So that's what that horizontal or phase shift refers to. It refers to it's shifting our starting point left and right. And the rest of our graph left and right too. All right, so let's look at 11. So our period is 2 pi. because I'm not multiplying our theta inside by anything, which means our increments are going to be pi over 2. Let me do our negative section as well. My midline is at 0. And my amplitude is 2, which means I'm going to go up 2 and down 2 from my midline. And my phase shift, adding and subtracting inside, moves it left and right, and it's opposite. So this is going to move us left pi over 2. So sine normally starts on the midline. So normally we'd start right here at 0, 0. But because we're shifting it, we're going to actually shift it left pi over 2. So here's going to be our starting point. Now because this is a positive sign, that means as I move to my next increment, I'm going to go up first. And then we can follow the pattern. So if it's at the top, it goes to the middle, and then to the bottom, and then to the middle, and then to the top. And then we can just follow our pattern through. All right, and our last one. So our period is 2 pi, because I'm not multiplying x by anything, which makes my increments pi over 2, because I take my period and divide it by 4. So this will be pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. My midline is at -1, so the middle of my graph is going to be at -1. My amplitude is 4, which means I'm going to be going up 4 from my midline. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to be going up to 3. And I'm going to be going down 4 from my midline. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So to -5. So the only y values I will be touching will be at 3, -1, and -5. Sometimes I find it helps people if they make like a maximum point or maximum line and a minimum line, so they know to bounce between these. I'm not one of those people, but if you do, feel free. If it makes it easier to know which numbers that you're supposed to hit each time. So cosine starts above or below the midline. So since this is negative, it's going to start below our midline. So I'm going to start below my midline. I don't have to shift it left or right any because I don't have any plus or minuses within my parentheses of my cosine. So it's at the bottom, so then I have to go to my midline, and then to the top, and then to the midline, and then to the bottom. And then we follow this back through. So to my midline, to the top, midline, and bottom. So what I find most, or where kids mess up a lot on this type of graph, is when this line is really close to 0 or we're skipping over 0, kids like to just start making points at 0 as well. You only should be doing it at your maximum, your midline, and your minimum. All right?